Okay, we are officially live. All right, we are live with Ariana Farina from Dances with Films LA. I'm so humbled and honored. People who know Penn Dance know that we have routinely mentioned how much of our philosophy comes from Dances with Films, Austin. There's so many festivals that we look up to, and having a lot of them featured at this film festival is so cool to be able to connect with the people who are behind these festivals. And I was just telling Leslie the other day that I was trying to explain the importance of how humbling it is to have somebody with so much knowledge and so much experience who works, like, at least in my opinion, the cause and the ethos of what you do is so inspirational to me. I was like, it would be like if you got to interview Will Smith, you know? So it's really cool, and I'm really excited that you're going to do this because I know a ton of filmmakers who, frankly, they're talented, but they don't know what to do with marketing and strategy. So you're here to save them thousands of dollars. Am I correct?
I don't have I don't have $1,000 guarantee, but I'll do my best. And what an introduction. That's very sweet of you to say. We do our best here that we can.
No, it's absolutely true. At least from my perspective, it's absolutely true. And I've always felt like everyone has their heroes, right? My heroes are awesome festival directors who champion independent films. So, um, would you mind introducing yourself? I mean, I could introduce you for you and say like 5 paragraphs. I mean, it was so crazy how much of your bio I had to like cut out. Be like, okay, do I want to mention that she's a writer as well and a filmmaker? And it's exhausting. So you tell me what you want to tell the audience about what you do.
Well, in the simplest of forms, I'm a film festival programmer. I'm the chair for narrative features programming and a new section called Unleash that we just introduced in 2020 at Dances with Films Festival. I'm also a film competition judge, and what else do I do? I also do talks like this on film festival strategy. You may have seen me in cities like New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago. Hopefully more cities to come after the pandemic is done, but just virtual stuff in the meantime. And most importantly, I am a film appreciator. I am obsessed with watching films.
That's really cool. So I assume you work with a ton of filmmakers and you've had so many conversations with independent filmmakers. Is there something that you would say that sticks out as one thing that filmmakers consistently get wrong when it comes to festival strategy and marketing? If you had to just pick one.
I mean, there's a few different things, but there's one that perpetually breaks my heart for the filmmakers. And I would have to say, that is not being careful about your premiere status for your film.
Hmm.
And a lot of folks go, well, what is that? What does that mean? So premiere status is basically you haven't showed your film at other places yet. Now, this is a little bit more of a finicky term when we think about the pandemic. Sometimes, films aren't considered premieres if they played only at a virtual festival. And then, of course, there's sometimes their world premiere instead of like in a theater eventually. And, festivals, I think, have been a little bit more lenient in terms of that to try and help the filmmaker out.
Yeah.
But premiere status is making sure that where you show your film first, that's your world premiere. And you want to hold on to that as tightly as you can for the festivals that you want to premiere at, and also the ones that require or prefer premiere status. The question I get oftentimes is why do festivals care about it? Well, it's because really we care about you. We want, first of all, I mean, there's a couple different reasons. Really, first of all, there's, if we want to give every film as big of a chance as we can to succeed. And to do that, we have to be able to build some sort of exciting buzz around your film. And we want you to have that too. So having, the opportunity, if a film is already played like down the block in LA, like at another film festival before it's, say, played at Dances with Films, why are industry folks going to show up to Dances with Films and see the film. So we want it to be this special thing. Also, like I said, we want to make sure that, you know, as many films get an opportunity as they can. So instead of just showcasing the same films that play at every festival, we
Yeah.
like to make sure that we're, you know, giving that big opportunity, that big world premiere to films that may have not played other places before. So when you apply to festivals, make sure when you're applying, you apply to those festivals you really want to premiere at, and also be aware of which ones are, you know, require or prefer premiere status. And how do you know that? It usually says on their website, or also you can probably find it on submission platforms like Film Freeway.
Okay.
And
Um,
if you're not sure, you could always ask. They usually have an email you could ask at.
That's a good point. And I totally feel what you're saying about premiere status. I mean, for us, you know, the first two out of our first 3 years, we had premiere requirements. And I was talking with Elliot over at Raindance, and he said, "You have premiere requirements for shorts? Are you insane? Do you know how much you're probably costing yourself in terms of, you know, dollars and cents?" And there was also this component of, why don't you just select this film that went to TIFF? Why don't you just select this feature that went to TIFF? And honestly, we've never selected a feature that went to TIFF for that reason. Now, it's not because we have anywhere near the amount of publicity that Dances with Films ever generates, but there is something special for an audience when you know that you are the first audience in your country, in vast country, seeing a film. So we've been a little bit lax with the premiere status this year ourselves, but we've been pretty big components of that as well. So that's a really good point, and I have seen a lot of filmmakers give up their premiere status at a festival that, frankly, they shouldn't be. So that's a really good point. So you're a major component of Dances with Films, and it's a festival that champions independent cinema. And to anyone out there watching who has a feature and they're, I don't know, afraid of politics, you know, behind why they may not get into a festival or not, if you have a really good feature, I would seriously suggest submitting to Dances with Films. It's an awesome film festival. And how important is that mission of, you know, that independent, you know, that trailblazing mission that Leslie started there? How important is that today to allow independent thoughts to seep to the surface and have a major platform?
I mean, I think it's really more important than ever. You know, right? There's certain platforms that you know, that have their own content that they make, like studios, etc. And do we really want a world where it's, you know, not that they don't make some great stuff, but where there's only a few elite people choosing what can be made, what can be showcased, and what has value? I don't want to live in that world. I want artists to be inspired to make new things, try new things, not necessarily worry about having a star in their film, just worrying about, do they have talent, you know?
Yeah,
Can they do something great, and do they have something to say? And can they market their film? Of course. But, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, you you really want to make sure that there's opportunities. It's not just for an elite few. And if you have that will, that drive, and that ability, I think you should be able to do it.
I completely agree with that. And I also think, you know, there was a quote the other day that I read that just made a very big impact on me, which said 99% of the books read, sorry, 1% of 99% of all books read are accounted for by 1% of all books produced. I'm saying that incorrectly, but I think you get what I mean. And I think the same thing is true for film, you know, where, you know, major studios are just totally outbidding everybody, and major festivals, you know, the airplay that you get, the impact that you can make. And if those curators are increasingly changing how they curate art, then that has a ripple effect in terms of how everyone consumes art. So I think it's extremely important, not only for, you know, small regional festivals that don't have a big reach, to continue to try and, you know, unite 30, 40, 50 people at a time with independent cinema. Even though it's not making ripple effects across the world, it is slowly changing, and if enough people can do that. So I do have appreciation for these, you know, community-based film festivals. But that being said, yes, there's a pragmatic element to this, and you do need the press. You do need, a major platform, and Dances with Films is one of those major platforms where I don't, I've looked into you guys when I started making films in 2016, and I've seen so many of our films have come from Dances with Films, and I've talked to filmmakers about their experience going there, and they were like, I don't sense anything political or pretentious about it. It just felt like really great people. So it's important, I think, for people with that mentality to rise to a place where they can do something for filmmakers that's, practical, that has impact in their careers. So that's really this is art and commerce, right? That's what film is. It's art and commerce, and that's the intersection of it. Film festivals can be an intersection between art and commerce. So it's kind of funny. This is all hypothetical, but this little workshop that I want to go through here with you, where I ask you a question and you direct me as a filmmaker, it's actually not that hypothetical. I actually do have film that I would love, and so I'm really looking forward to this. And I know a lot of people that we've selected to Pendants who are probably watching this somewhere. They're working on their first feature, so this is never too early to start thinking about this stuff. So. All right, I'm gonna enter into a Zen zone where I'm gonna be this filmmaker and you're gonna be my festival strategist, and we're gonna just workshop this live. All right. Okay. Hello, Ariana. I'm a filmmaker. Let's say I have a feature and I'm ready to submit it to festivals. I think it's really good because I have a lot of friends around me who don't tell me the truth. So let's say I think it's really good. It's cut and ready. What are 3 things I need to do before hitting submit on my first submission?
Well, I think now that you framed it like that, I think one of the first things you want to do is show it to some people that you can trust to give you honest and helpful feedback before you submit.
Okay.
And the way I say it is, that doesn't mean your mom who's going to be like, it's great, it's fabulous. She's your mom, she's going to support you, but make sure you get some folks that say, hey, you could cut out these 2 minutes here, or, hey, I think, we could re-edit this, or, maybe we could, do some pickups, add this scene in here. So that's probably the first thing to do. What you also want to do, okay, so say it's all ready, right? Now you've done that. You really want to put together a festival strategy. Don't just fly by the seat of your pants. And this really includes budgeting. Understand what your budget is. And that doesn't mean just how much does it cost to submit to festivals. Just remember, once you get into festivals, then you have all sorts of costs that come from there, right? So then you have, of course, travel money to go to those festivals, maybe flying some folks into, some key folks, or everybody, who knows? Sometimes people will bring everybody. There's also, of course, marketing tools that you'll need when you get there. There's going to be like posters. You're going to need something called a DCP, which is, I don't know, I think at least $1,000 to make or something, and is needed to play your film at a lot of festivals. You're going to need, little marketing gifts and all sorts of things. So put that budget together. And then I'd say one of the biggest things to do in your festival strategy is put together the rounds that you want to submit to festivals. And this really goes back to the premiere status. So first of all, be aware that a lot of festivals won't accept a film that's older than 1 or 2 years. It must have been completed within the last 1 or 2 years. It doesn't mean, okay, I took 10 years to make this film and oh my gosh, I can't submit it to festivals. No, it's when it's completed. And how do we know when it's completed? When you tell us, but also we have the internet. We can see things like IMDb. And if it says, completed in 2012 and it's 2021, what's going on here? So be aware of that when you're putting together the rounds. So the first round of film festivals that you submit to, this is what I think you should do. Some people say, well, maybe I should just go for, start off smaller and then go bigger. I honestly think you should reach for the stars. If your goal is to play at Dances with Films, I think you should submit to it. Even if you don't get in, maybe you learn something down the road. So that first round, you apply to your top film festivals, the ones that you would absolutely love to premiere at, and also, of course, the ones that require premiere or prefer premiere status. Then round 2, of course, then, the next films you'd like to play at. So the first round is the top ones, right? So any of those would be okay if you got it. And then the second round, the ones that play it afterwards, maybe you've already done your premiere, and then the next round you move to festivals that don't require premiere status, which a lot of great festivals do, and then you might even have a third round. And that's really, really important to do, because what happens instead is a lot of filmmakers will just submit to a lot of film festivals all at once.
Hmm.
And then it becomes like this crazy free-for-all. They'll get into, a small festival that doesn't require premiere status, which I think you were talking a little bit about before, and they'll get in, it's exciting and everything, but at the same time, that happens before they hear from other festivals that would have been preferred for them to play at first.
Right.
And so now they're kind of in this awkward position where they, well, what do? Do they turn down this festival? Do they, which is not great to do to a festival either. If you applied to it and you say you want to go, you should go, right? And if you do it in rounds, you're not going to wind up in that position. But also, then you don't have to start asking awkward questions like, hey, to the other festival, could you let us know early? If we got in or not, and sometimes they can or cannot do that. Also, it kind of stops. We're all working, a mile a minute here at festivals, and they have to stop and make the special consideration. It's not preferred to do. So please apply in rounds. So that's really the second thing, putting together that strategy and making sure you're applying in rounds. And then I would say and there's a lot of other things to do. I mean, I could probably talk for an hour about this, but one other third thing to do, write a cover letter to the film festival that you're submitting to. And a lot of people go, well, what does that entail? And they'll just write about their film. Okay, that's great. We want to know the specific, exciting things about your film. But also, we would like to specifically know why you want to play at this festival. Are you excited about this festival? What do you know about this festival? Because we want to know. We want filmmakers who want to be there, but also filmmakers who want and have the ability to make the best of their experience at the festival. So, if you maybe write in the cover letter, hey, I came to your festival last year, it was fantastic. I have this film about blah, 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 I don't know, football or something. And I wanted to come there because I've been in contact with some local groups that are into football, and they're all excited to, they would love to come see the film. And, I think that's how I get a great audience for this. And I'm also connecting with agents and all this stuff in the area, whatever it may be, kind of talk about what you want to do at the festival. And that really shows us, okay, not only have you thought this through, but you really do specifically care and like this festival.
I think that's a really good point. If I can just speak off the little, and just take my filmmaker hat off and put my film festival director hat on. That happened a lot to us in year 2, where we were getting a lot. Like, we've had really good films since year 1. We've had really good films that, frankly, no first year, second year, or third year film festival had any business having. We had those films, but the caveat, it's good for the audience. They're watching great films, and they can walk away with an impression that Pendance has really great films. But what was lacking was the push from the filmmaker. They weren't that excited about getting into Pendance because they just world premiered at Sundance. So it was like almost like it doesn't really matter that much. And there was a lot of that happened in our first 2-3 years. We never really took it personally. But when filmmakers started talking about Pendance in a way that was very, like, they were really proud of it, like they were like, I can't believe my Canadian premiere is happening here, I think that immediately changed how many people were coming to our festival. It also changed how many submissions we were getting, because these people were really proud. So I think that's really an important part of, and to the point where you said cover letters, we're all human watching these films. We're human beings. We do open these cover letters, and we know what copy and paste looks like, right? So when somebody is really like, they attended this film festival last year, one cover letter, I don't know if he's watching right now, but Michael, cello, like what he's written about this festival and what it means to him and how it, inspired him to make his film. I mean, it's not going to get you into the festival to say something nice about us, but it's really nice to know that this is where your heart is and this is where you're coming from. Okay, filmmaker hat back on. All right, so I've gotten a call from a festival director holding my world's premiere. Now, what I mean by this for anyone watching is that you did what Ariana said. You submitted in rounds, and you're one of the lucky few who got into one of your choice first round selections. Now, generally speaking, at least in my experience, good festivals, typically the top end festivals, do call, especially for feature filmmakers. They do schedule a call just to get to know you a little bit and announce, talk to you a little bit about. So you've gotten the call from the festival director. They're holding your world premiere. What's my game plan here? Because there's a little bit of negotiating that can happen here, in terms of what can I ask for, what would be inappropriate to ask for. Can I ask for instance, can I ask for an extra pass? Obviously, yes. Can I ask for extra tickets because my friends and family want to come? Can I ask for hotel? Can I ask for airfare? Can I ask for partial airfare? Can I ask for instance, can I request that my film play in a certain theater? Can I request that my film play at Friday night? Things like this. So what should I know going into that conversation?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing to understand going into that conversation is we want to help you. We might not be able to give you all those things all the time. Sometimes some folks are able to, but I think, and this is me really giving kind of some insider perspective here, but always try and think of the film festival experience it's like it's not a one-sided relationship. It's not just you. It's also the festival, has their needs too, so they can keep going and keep creating the type of festival that helps you. And I think the big thing to know is film festivals, there's a lot of people working really hard, really long hours. They're not the highest grossing industry. A lot of people think they're just swimming in money, which is really not true. A lot of times they're slim margins, even the large ones. And, sometimes the sponsorship will come on and help with some of that. But in terms of just gross money that's made, it's not so much. So being able to pay for a ton of things without huge sponsors is really, really hard to do. I'd be careful about asking for too many free things, just kind of, and demanding them. I think, of course, there's some things you can ask for politely and say, oh, we understand if you can't do this, but, you say, I would like this if it's possible, just to know that this isn't a deal breaker either way if you can't do it. Mm-hmm. I think another things to ask for that aren't just, freebies would be like, what sorts of opportunities, will I have to market my film at the festival? What sorts of resources do you have for marketing the film? And sometimes, there'll be PR people that they work with that, you can work with the filmmakers too. Sometimes there's like at Dances with Films, we have a booth where we have everybody's cards and little giveaways and everything. So understanding that, like what places are you going to have to market your film? Understanding how everything plays out. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be on their website, but just kind of preparing for what's going to be the sequence of events once you get there and what things are going to be at your disposal to use. And at the same time, being polite and understanding, of that mutual relationship that you have with the festival.
That's a really good point. Okay, so don't ask for too much, right? Be reasonable, but don't be afraid to ask for what resources they have to offer. So just don't be pushy. Is that kind of where you're
yeah, that's kind of the overall perspective, I would say.
Okay, perfect. Now, I'm ready to go to the festival. Okay, so let's say I got through that negotiating call. They gave me, they told me that they could get me a really good slot, on Saturday night because my film's a really important film. So I'm ready to go to the festival. My bags are packed. I'm packing my suitcase. What are 3 things that I need that I probably don't think I need before I hop on a plane?
Okay. So one thing I'd say is clothing to dress to impress. You're probably going to have some events to go to. And you're going to want to put your best foot forward. And, I think whatever showcases your personality is best for that, whether you're just a straight, suit or cocktail dress type of person, or whether you have a quirky thing and you like to wear a quirky coat or whatever it may be, something that don't be afraid to peacock a little bit, but also have stuff to look presentable, because you might wind up setting up some meetings while you're there.
Yeah.
So those business meetings, you want to look professional. You want to look like you know what you're doing. You want to understand what is appropriate to wear to those types of meetings, depending upon where you go. People say, well, what do people wear here in Hollywood? And it's sort of Hollywood hip. It changes a little bit, but something that's a little bit creative, but also mixed with business is a good thing to bring. Marketing tools for your film. So poster for your film, whether you're going to pick that up locally or whether you're going to carry it all rolled up and bring it there, which, make sure it doesn't get creased or anything along the way. Because a lot of festivals will allow you to put up your poster for a period of time, or usually at least in front of your theater. Film cards, like I mentioned, to hand them out and to also put on a table for folks to pick up. And it should have the name of your film, the name of the festival, and the time of your screening, so folks know where to find your film. And there might be some other information the festival requires. So definitely check in with the festival to see, what they recommend or require. And then promotional giveaway items. So this is where I think you can get really creative, whether it's hats with your film on it, whether it's pens. You try and think of things people would, first of all, want to take or want to pick up from you and your marketing team at the festival. Yep. But things also that could showcase it. Like if it's a t-shirt, then suddenly they're a walking advertisement for your film. And, with the information of how to get to the screening, and also, it's a conversation starter too. So if people are walking around with this information, they say, hey, what's that? What's that? What's that film? And, I think those are probably the top things you want to make sure you have.
Okay, so let's repeat that. So we've got posters. You need posters. You need clothes, dress to impress. And I will share a funny story with you about how I did not dress to impress at one of my last film festival experiences, and how that nearly got me kicked out of the theater. And giveaways. So postcards. I've seen a lot of filmmakers do that. At Pendants, they'll just put like little postcards in the lobby, and they'll bring T-shirts, little tote bags, and stuff with their merchandise. And by the way, guys, like every time you go to a film festival, just know that eventually you're gonna need these people as word of mouth. People who watch your film at the film festival, keep connected with the people, because you're going to need these people to talk about your film and say they saw it at this film festival and now it's going on Netflix, or now it's going on Amazon, or now it's on Hulu. And people who come to festivals generally are the type of people who like to say they saw something before it became mainstream. So those people, giving that person an extra incentive to remember you is super pro advice, and I really appreciate you saying that. Now, filmmaker hat back on for a second there. I got into Gasparilla Film Festival, and I must have been going through a personal meltdown at the time, because I didn't have time to get a haircut before I went, and I was on Canadian winter, and I know that Florida's hot. I don't know why the heck I brought a hat, a toque, but it was the only one I had, and didn't have time to get a baseball cap. And I got shifted out of my hotel last minute, and I had a transitional period of 12 hours when I didn't have a hotel. So I was carrying my suitcase around. So combine all those elements. So I had I looked very, very untethered, very underslept. I had a toque on in, hot weather in Florida, and I was carrying around a suitcase. And I went into the theater. Now, thankfully, it wasn't my screening. I polished up for my screening, but it was to another screening. And there was an older gentleman there who literally thought I was there to blow up the theater. Oh, no. I'm not kidding. He had the festival staff check my bag. And I was like, what impression am I giving people looking this disheveled? So, ironically, speak of Michael Lucello, this guy was so sharply dressed last year. He had a blue suit on, and he was on the red carpet. And he's probably the least pretentious guy I've ever met off the red carpet, but he had the wherewithal and smarts to know that in that moment, you never know who's watching. So that's really great advice. And it's generally not something that I would think to do, because As you can tell, I'm wearing a sweatshirt and a hoodie, and I'm just the most chill person about this stuff, but it's a huge thing, and it's how people interpret us. Okay, so festival director hat back on. Now, I'm at the festival. I got selected to a big one. One can dream. So it's my international premiere, but the festival is promoting a giant feature from some known director during my screening time. Now, this happens to a lot of people. People who attend smaller film festivals when they're used to, like one or two things happening at the same time. With bigger film festivals, sometimes you have 6, 7 things happening at the same time, and you might have 3 prime features playing at 7 p.m. And you unfortunately might be competing against, Brad Pitt's new feature. So that being said, how do I drive people to my screening, even if I'm playing second banana on Saturday night? And who do I really want to invite?
Yeah, I mean, that one's a tricky one. First of all, I think you want to find out if you have a second screening too, just in case certain folks can't make it. They want to go to that Tom Cruise flick.
Yep.
Can't blame them, right? Tom Cruise is awesome in films, or at least I think his films were fun. Mission Impossible. So, but of course, you want to invite the usual people. You want to invite film execs, managers, agents, distributors, and of course, an audience you think will love your film and give you that big standing ovation to get all those other business type people excited in the theater. So like I said, see if there's a second screening. And if when you're talking to them, say, hey, can you come to it? And they go, oh, is it during the Tom Cruise film? And they go, oh, I just can't make it. You go, well, that's okay. Second screening at this time, and I'll also be there. So you could do that. And I think also the other thing too is you can make like a little joke of it, or kind of like use it as bragging rights a little bit. You could say, see it as a good thing and say, hey, this festival is playing me alongside this Tom Cruise film, my film, which is, I don't know, sounds pretty cool if you ask me.
Because that sounds like that's a nice spin. Yeah. That might be a way to go about that. I mean, personally, I don't like the concept of 10 a.m. screenings. I get that some festivals have to do it, but I've always been kind of against the idea of how, some films just get shafted with really terrible times. And we try not to do that over here. Like we're putting shorts on Saturday night at 9 p.m. against nothing. Like literally that's what you have on Saturday night at 9 p.m. because they're really good shorts. And, I think as we get bigger, just as other festivals have had to adapt, you'll have to program something next to something. And I guess I wanted to know, what would you do if you were the something being programmed against? So, okay, I brought my items that you mentioned. Ironically, I have brought my items to closing night gala. I'm there. I see my fellow filmmakers. I see the festival staff. I see producers from other films. I see distributors. I see agents. What's my game plan? What should I be doing with this limited 2.5 hours that I have to mingle?
Well, I think what you want to make sure you do is you talk to the folks, most importantly, that may help you with your film in the future. You want to make sure, if you haven't talked to them, you want to do that, or you want to make sure that you have some sort of like farewell or something, at least briefly, with those folks. I think what you also want to do is talk to the festival and thank them for being there. Let them know what you liked about the festival. It helps the festival understand for the future what's great about it. Also helps us understand that you're a great filmmaker, because you never know. Next year, you might have another film you want to play at that festival, and it's good for that festival to know that you were engaged and that you enjoyed the experience.
Right.
And then that being said, talk to everyone after that. Once you've kind of done that, you never know who is that person that is been supporting your film, whether it be the assistant or the intern who screened your film for the festival and fought for it to the programmer to get into the festival, whether it be the assistant to some film exec was the person who saw your film at the festival for them and is now going to be going and talking to them about how fantastic it was and how much they need to reach out to you and, watch this film.
Mhm.
Um, it's a good policy for life too, whether that's kind of the self-interest aspect from it, but also, it's just nice to be nice to everybody. It's nice to be at an event where everybody's friendly, nobody's pretentious, and nobody is only playing the game. They're also just trying to meet great people, because those people could also be your collaborators for the future. Even if you don't see an immediate business relationship, there could be something, the next year that comes up for both of you, and you stay in contact and you wind up making that next great feature or short or whatever you make together.
You know what? I think that's so true. And there's so many filmmakers out there who are a little bit introverted naturally. They feel a little bit shy. Maybe they're just, like they don't do the whole schmoozing thing too well. But
Yeah, I would have to say, whatever you do, don't do that.
yeah,
I frankly can be a little bit shy myself, and especially in front of large audiences. I like to sit by myself in my place and watch movies by myself. That's a lot of fun for me.
yeah,
But sometimes people think too they have to be aloof, especially when they come to Hollywood. They're like, this is how people do it. They play it cool. I'm like, do not play it cool. Be
yeah.
the exact opposite. Be the sweetest, nicest, most outgoing person ever. And don't just walk up and start talking about yourself. The best thing to do is to walk up and talk about their thing. And eventually it will lead to the conversation about your thing. But be outgoing, whether it comes naturally or not.
Yeah, we just had OJ a bit on before, and he was talking about his film Jitters, which was at a whole bunch of festivals in the United States. He came to Pendance, and then he was able to adapt that into a feature. And I remember meeting him at Gasparilla during my, homeless stage with my toque and everything, and I cleaned up for my screening, I looked okay, and we watched each other's films. And my first comment really to him was about how much I enjoyed his film. And his first comment to me back was how much he enjoyed mine. And we kept in touch pretty much from there on out. And I don't think that would have nearly been the same interaction if I had started out with, let me tell you about my film, because you know what I mean. And so I think I'm trying to grasp into like what is a tangible like one liner that I could sum up what you just said in is don't be a jackass a really good one liner for that. Like there's no excuse, like there's no excuse, there's no remedy for being a person that people don't want to work with. It's so funny, and it's so interesting that you mentioned like talk to the festival programmers and talk to all the staff, because you really, I mean, people who submit to festivals often don't understand the back end of this, right? Festival programmers move around. They go from festival to festival. Some festival programmers I know program for 4 festivals at the same time concurrently.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you never know who you're going to meet, who's going to be like the festival. And I don't mean this like don't be political about it, and don't schmooze and try to kiss someone's butt, but be a presentable and good human being, because that person is going to remember you, and you never know if that person ends up being a programmer for TIFF or Dances with Films or Berlinale one day, and now you're on a short list of people that they can't stand, and that's just, that's not going to be a good thing for you. So, I've noticed it over and over again that good people tend to get ahead. I know that seems like a counter narrative, and people say like, oh my God, I'm such a good person and I can't get ahead. I think the long game says that if you're a good human being and you're genuinely warm and considerate and good to people, people will sense that and they will support you and they will champion you. That's just...
I honestly would agree. I think the people I see repeatedly do well at festivals and keep being able to come back and have new projects and, sell their projects and everything are these people that do exactly that. Be a nice person, be an outgoing person, and be an interested not only in your own stuff, but other people's stuff type of person.
Humility is it goes a long way. Okay, so all right, so I'm done with the festival experience. I'm done with my festival run. I did round A. I used round A to get into a couple of really prominent film festivals. I ended up getting into a whole bunch of smaller regional festivals as a result of that. Probably got a few waivers along the way, but now 8 months now, I'm done with my festival run. So along the way, I found a slew of distributors who are willing to sign me on. What am I looking for when I'm evaluating these offers from these various distributors? Because just as a aside to this, I find that this seems to be one of the most confusing things for newer filmmakers to get is, I got a distribution deal. And it's like, not really. You didn't really get a distribution deal. So can you take me through, what am I looking for in the fine print? What kind of, how do I research these people, who are coming at me?
So, and there's a lot of pieces, moving parts to this. I think, first of all, this is a good position to be in, to have options. And it's usually the position of a person who's really done a lot of networking and been a really, good, nice person throughout the festival experience. I think you got to ask yourself, first of all, do you want to go with the distributor, or do you want to self-distribute? There's a lot of films, including some big films now, that do it themselves, because sometimes the best person to market your film is yourself. If you happen to be a master of marketing, you never know. So ask yourself that question. That's an okay question to ask now. I think also you want to understand that contract, right? That's what you're talking about. Get legal counsel if you can afford it. Maybe try and make sure that that's part of your film festival strategy and game plan from the start, in terms of your budgeting, to have that at least initial consultation of somebody who specializes in entertainment explain these aspects to you, and what is standard and what is not standard. Get money up front if you can. Because sometimes it can take years, if you're lucky, to make that money back. And this is even for films that do quite well. I'm not going to lie and say that it's an easy marketplace out there for independent film. It's not. It's something that's difficult, and you got to work towards, and it can be done. There's a lot of films that do it with or without stars. I'd say also understand what are the regions for rights they're asking for. Sometimes they'll just ask for everything, but do they really need everything? Do they need international rights? Do they need these other rights, which, maybe you think you could get another plan in place for a different region outside of this distributor? You figure out what they're asking for. Are they asking for theater rights, but do they actually have like a game plan for going into theaters? And ask how they plan to roll out your film, and what marketing tools and what sort of marketing budget they're going to be putting into it. You don't want to just hand out your rights and have them have no game plan or sort of guarantees of any sort in this situation. That being said, also, I think there's a really great article by somebody named Liz Manishill that I think would be good to reference on this. She writes about this all the time. She collects data actually from distributors and other folks saying what they want or what they offer. Of course, you got to read between the lines, I think, just my personal opinion. Sometimes, people only say what they say sometimes, but there is a lot of great information in there. And you can find that at dearproducers-fact-sheet-2021-edition. But I think if you look her up, you'll be able to find that information too. And I don't know, I could, am I able to drop this in a comment thing or something?
How about write it to me, and I will, I'll add it to a ticker. Hold on, let's see. Okay, can you tell me that again? www.
Yeah. So is there it says.
Yeah. Why don't you send it to me in the private chat, or actually you do have the right to make a comment.
I can. Cool. Oh, actually, I don't know if I do. So I'm going to send it in the private chat to you, because it doesn't look like it's letting me comment there, but I can do private chat. All right.
Coming right up, guys. All right.
So I think, that's a good place to start thinking about it. But yeah, there's a lot of moving parts here. So, don't just jump into it because it's exciting that you got one, right?
Right.
Really, before you get it, I would say look into all this, because they sometimes will give you a turnaround time that they want, you to respond within. So the more going into it, the better, I would say.
That's a really good point. And to your point about what's their game plan? Some of these distributors. I'll give you an example of something that I saw happen, and this is a completely separate question. It's not like prescriptive, but I kind of want your feedback on this. So I was at a TIFF screening where there was sort of a live bidding war going on outside the screening, and the director was doing their Q&A. Okay. And somebody asked the director the question, what was the budget of this film? And he foolishly answered correctly and truthfully what the budget was for that film. And those offers that were coming out outside, they disappeared real fast. So how honest should people be when heading into their festival strategy about their real budget? So if you did make a film for $25,000 somehow by pulling favors and whatnot, how honest should you be about the fact that you made a $25,000 feature?
I don't think you necessarily have to reveal this information. I just as a policy, I think it's best to be an honest person. But there's a reason sometimes folks don't want to answer that question. I think a lot of people can respect if you don't want to answer that. You can also leave these difficult questions to your reps, right? If you oftentimes have a film that's big enough that's in a bidding war, you might have an agent or a manager, and to discuss if this happens beforehand with them and let them answer some of those difficult business questions.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I mean, I think too many people get caught up in, I achieved this amazing result in this much money. And there's an immediate hit of that, of like, wow, you made this for $20,000 or you made this for $15,000, but we can't all be primer, right? Like not every film is going to have that type of run. And to a lot of people, at least in my experience, now I'm not the expert here, you are, but at least in my experience, what I've seen is people tend to offer what they think a thing is worth, right? In terms of, rights to buy. And nobody, at least again, in my opinion, you're not expecting $1 million for a film that you are publicly saying cost you $50,000. People have a sort of like subconscious bias against doing that type of thing. So I genuinely agree with you. I think you shouldn't talk about your budget unless your budget is something that you want to talk about. So, okay, we're gonna open it up for questions. So people, please litter the comments with your questions for Ariana if you can. And I'm sure that you have many. I have one final question, which is I had my little run in the sun, and it's time to get the film alive on the internet. Okay, so it's an indie drama with no major actors that you've heard of, but I did get into some reputable film festivals like Seattle, Dances with Films, Ann Arbor. What's my marketing plan? What's realistic in terms of what I should spend and what I might get back for it? Now, this is mainly to the point of, when you said self-distribute, the VOD model, right? So let's say I do choose to self-distribute. What is realistically my game plan here?
And just remember too, even if you've gotten classical distribution, the best marketer of your film is oftentimes going to be you. You're going to be pushing it out a lot anyways. So make sure you're budgeting for that too. But I would say be careful with your budget, right? And it's really hard to, say what, every film is kind of different in this way. And it really depends upon, what certain aspects of the films are. But so I think you really got to think about what marketing tools do you have? Is there anybody helping you promote the release that has like maybe a social influencer that's, going to help you with this? What are the marketing tools and things that you have access to? What are the places, how do you want to do your press release? Do you have a PR person to help you do that has relationships with the press to get it into press? So thinking about that too, maybe having that budget for that PR person. And then I think you also want to think about, does your topic matter have a built-in audience, right? So maybe you made something about video games. And it's about a very popular video game that everyone loves. Is that gonna, maybe you're not gonna need quite as much money to do your marketing plan versus something that's, a grief drama or something that's a little bit of a harder sell. So, there's so many aspects to really think about, but you want to think about what you have access to, what your budget is, and what sort of tools you might have to to execute this. And then, of course, you want to think, do you have connections to those streaming platforms? And if you don't, do you need a manager? Do you have a manager? Can they help you get access to that? Because even if you self-distribute, you still may be able to get on some of those streaming platforms. But yeah, that's I would say in the broadest way of thinking about it, one way to think about it.
Okay. We have a question here. What type of budget do I need to market my film?
Very hard to know without knowing specific aspects. Like I said, I think the best thing to do first is to ask yourself what you, first of all, have access to and what you don't, what, is going to be free for you, what's not going to be free for you. And there's all levels of marketing, right? There's marketing prior to even submitting your film to festivals, kind of getting that social media vibe up, getting maybe some press releases while you're shooting if you can, to get people excited about the film. Some of that might be free. Like I said, social media, that's all free. You can, unless you're doing paid ads, but you can really build that for free before you even wind up at festivals. And then, making sure you have money for those handouts, the postcards, and the, what did I say before? The poster. Those are really key. And then probably adding some extra for some other tools as well. And then, of course, in, the back end, considering all those questions I just talked about, how much that might cost you depending upon your situation, and budgeting for that.
Okay, nice. We have, can I go without an agent? So I guess this means, can I go without an agent or a PR rep? No, just I guess through the whole process of from start to finish, can I do this on my own?
Of course you can. You can do anything, right? And, sometimes it's not even the right choice to have an agent if it's not the agent who's going to be fighting for you tooth and nail all the time. There are a lot of things that you can do on your own. Okay. It depends, right? It depends upon what type of person you are, what type of situation it is, and, how much effort you're going to put in. I think either way, you're going to put in a lot of effort, whether you have an agent or not, into this marketing.
Okay. We have a question from one of our selected filmmakers who made a really, really interesting documentary called Curiosity of Ed Pratt. So, Thomas Sandler, what are your opinions on hiring festival strategists? What should I look for when scouting which strategist to go with? That's a great question.
I think, the usual things. You want to know their credentials. You want to know what types of projects they worked on in the past. You want to hear about, how much money it costs to work with them. You're going to want to know what happened to those films that they worked with. Yeah.
Okay. That's a fair point. And you're going to want to, can I add something to that? I know the question wasn't asked for me, but develop a keen sense of sniffing through bullshit. I feel like that's important because you're dealing with the people who are really, really good talkers sometimes, and you can be swindled. You can miss details. So, and yeah, also don't be desperate, I think. Would you agree with that? Like
yeah, I would. I mean, like anything in life, right? Especially the first time you're jumping into something, you got to be a little bit wary of what you're jumping into. I think after you're an independent filmmaker for maybe 10, 20 years and you've done this a lot, you can really spot this stuff quicker, but just be aware, especially when you're just starting out, of scammers.
Okay, we have a really good question here. Now, this is something that I was, interestingly enough, I was going to bring up on the programming panel with Leslie, but we can touch on it here with you and see what you think. So we have Michael's question here. How often are you sent rough cuts of a feature film, and how do you look at that rough cut versus a final print of a film? That's a great question.
So, we understand, again, this comes back to money. Sometimes folks will send in something to try and get a lower rate earlier on, but it's almost there, right? Or sometimes, they're hitting that final deadline. It's really, really, really close. They know that they're going to get it done a week or two afterwards. We try and wait, if we can, in those circumstances to watch it, because really, in its most complete form is what we would be screening, and we need to know before we programmed it anyways. I really, really, if you don't have to, I really recommend to not submit a rough cut because there's so many technical aspects that are hard to picture. And for instance, Dances with Films plays on the Chinese theater, right? It's a 450 person theater, great sound system. And if we're noticing some sort of technical aspect, just watching it on our computer, we'll really worry about what it's going to look like on that big screen. But if it's complete and it looks good, we'll know a lot better. Also, there's a lot of films really that look not like what they are in that rough cut, and they really wind up being something spectacular.
Right.
And in life, sometimes you only get that one shot, right? To make that first impression. You really do, when you can, you want to put your best foot forward if you can.
That's a really great response and a really good question. I'm really glad you answered that. And I'm very curious to see how that answer is going to compare to the programmers panel, because they're going to be asked virtually the same question by me, which is, should you submit? And honestly, I've felt the same thing. Don't submit rough cuts, but ironically, it's sort of twisted to say that because we selected a film based on a rough cut this year. So, and if he had waited till his film was done, he would have missed the deadline completely. So, it definitely does happen here. Now we have a really long question here. What is the best example of free marketing by a filmmaker you've ever seen at Dances with Films? For example, someone who did something clever that didn't really cost them any money to get attention for their film. And that question comes from Alexander. It's a great question.
Stood in the lobby and talked to everybody, went into all the screenings and came out, talked to those audience, talked to those filmmakers about what they liked about their film. And then it led into their film. Then they wound up having a full house of people at their screening, standing ovation. Everybody absolutely loved it. And I think it led to great things for their film too. So really, sometimes your presence is the best thing that you have at these festivals.
Okay.
And being, the delightful person that you are.
That's interesting. I'm kind of curious because this is sort of a follow-up to that. We've done this thing at Pendants where we allow certain filmmakers that we know maybe are coming into the festival. We'll have them lead a workshop or a panel, or we'll have them sit on a panel or something so that people can get to know them a little bit before their screening, because we don't have huge money and huge publicists and huge ad dollars to pack theaters. We need to get people to care about the directors and to care about their work in order for them to show up. So what is something that festivals can do to prop up maybe their, I'm gonna say this politely, their C-level feature selections, right? So the least marketable among the bunch, not the most highest rated, but films that are really good. And is there something that festivals can do to help?
Well, that's one thing. First of all, Dances with Films really prides itself on treating everybody the same, whether you're a short or you're a feature. You're going to get attention and responses, and we're going to do our best to help promote everything that we can for you. Things, of course, the festival tries to do press releases for them. They also, there's mixers, and there's opportunities for the filmmakers to meet folks in the filmmaker lounge. And there's all sorts of folks up there. There could be distributors and there could be other filmmakers. And then those are kind of the places where you can really meet other people, but also, offering a place where they can put out their marketing information, the table or the place, where they can hand out the little trinkets or whatever things that go along
right
with the film.
Interesting. I'm curious because you are, in a sense, a festival strategist. So what would you say would be your advice to a filmmaker? Sorry to make you give away a trade secret for free and put you on the spot, but what's something that you would say to a filmmaker who's saying, like I need to get buzz and I don't have money? Would it just be like go and talk to everybody, go and show face at people's screenings, go ask questions, and then get people to come to your screening because you went to their screening? Or is there something else kind of creative, like what Alexander was talking about? I think what he was expecting was more like a hack that they figured out, like something really creative that they did. So is there something like that?
Sometimes the hack really is just putting in that time to do that work, being at the festival the whole week. Really, like I said, and I mean it, these filmmakers I've seen do this before fill house. And this isn't a tiny theater. This is 450 people sitting in a theater they put in there. And anybody who's ever played a festival with their independent film knows how hard that is to do. That is not easy to do. Just kind of putting in, that's really, I mean, I know sometimes I'd say that there's no substitute in this case for, and it isn't hard work. I mean, I don't know, unless you're a super introverted person, it's really not hard. It's fun. Um, Getting to do something where you're just socializing, being fun, and getting to talk about film. I think that's a pretty good deal to be able to find an audience for your film. But you can also reach out to groups too before you get there. That's one thing I do recommend. Reach out to groups that will help you promote your film. If, like I said, the football example before, maybe there are local groups interested in football, and maybe you could ask them if they could send it out in their mailer, and then walk in there once you get to the festival, say, hey, I'm so glad to finally connect with you in person. I'm so excited to have, some of your membership come to the screening too, and, do that FaceTime again with them. But yeah, I mean, those are the free things along with your social media, making sure that you have strong social media presence all the way from the start of your film and building up your audience and following on that. So you don't have to work so hard once you eventually get there. But yeah, I mean, and it's surprising considering that this is all doable. Not everybody does this. There's always a few that will do this, but really everybody, it's free and you can do it. So I would say do it.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think people need to look at their own film and become their own publicist, especially if they cannot afford a publicist. I know that some big festivals do suggest you get one. If you get selected as a feature, you should get a publicist. But festivals' jobs, at least, are to market the festival. Like, they obviously will try to help every individual film that they can, but the goal of a festival is to market the entire event. And so it's sometimes really difficult to market a specific film, like a specific short or a specific feature, disproportionately. And so I think what you're saying is really smart. Like, if you do have a film about suicide, reach out to suicide prevention centers, locally, and, maybe even buy some tickets for them and say, hey, you want to give away 10 tickets, and maybe coordinate that little relationship with the festival. Or, maybe, as you said about the football thing, maybe there's a local, football team that might be able to, give you a little shout out. There's tons of ways to get creative with this. And one thing, that ties together the last conversation we had with Odej and the conversation we're having with you right now is indie filmmaking is tough. It's really tough without those billion-dollar ad budgets and stuff. It's really difficult to get people to come watch your film, to support your film, to finance your film. So I really appreciate you coming on and giving people some insight into how to use those very, sometimes, minimal dollars, and to not waste money. Because there are filmmakers who do those mass submissions and then they run out of money in the first round. And they realized that 17 or 20 of those submissions did not need to be made. So I think, you started with a great point and you just continue to build from there. So thank you so much for doing this.
Sure. No problem. Yeah, I think the example about the thing too with the money, the example I usually give in my presentation is there's a reason, studios spend 100 million on marketing or something like that, or 200 million, right? If there was a simple hack to just make an audience poof appear, they would do it, right? There is no simple way, but there are ways that you can personally bring for free people to your film, and that's putting in that hard work and that FaceTime.
That's absolutely it. And I think independent filmmakers, I've seen a few of them. I'm sure you've seen a ton of Dances with Films, people with that, understanding. I think that's the most important thing here is understanding the game allows you to, understanding the rules of the game helps you to understand how you're supposed to approach it. And so if going in that I'm going to have to work to fill my screening, but the fact that I'm going to fill my screening is going to lead to 450 people who know about my film, and they're going to be able to help me when I eventually take that next step. I think, people who walk in with that game plan not only will be more effective, but they're also going to be a lot more self-assured, about what they're doing. So I think this really helps, and I hope that people will consider submitting to Dances with Films with their next feature, or I think it's a fantastic film festival, and yeah, it's such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, for me too. I learned so much. Okay, does anyone have any final questions? Lauren? Yeah, we got programmers in the house here. Nice. All right, cool. So for everyone else, we'll be back on at 6 o'clock with Rich Heinrich talking about independent film production. And to anyone who watches all 6 hours of these, I promise it will build to one very coherent point. All right, see you, Ariana.
Nice
Bye.
seeing you. Thank you. Have a great festival.
Thank you so much. Bye.